You are listening to Whispers of Magic, where every tale carries the echo of timeless wonder. This story contains intense scenes and may not be suitable for all listeners.
KOPOD by M. Mojganian. Chapter 1. The Dead Sea was always a place of mystery and danger, shrouded in an eerie fog that never lifted. No wind or waves disturbed its cursed waters, and nothing lived on its desolate shores. When I was 6, my father took me to the top of the cliffs and showed me the beach below us. "Never step in those sands, Bod," he warned. "The sea is death, and it will kill whoever dares to enter it. All those who wandered on this beach lost their minds. Remember that." I remember he cried that day. So did me and my sister. That was the day when our mother left us. Since then, I have never set foot on those treacherous sands. Instead, I stood on the last big rock that touched the shore, staring out at the lifeless waters. Even the rotten smell of the sea did not bother me. In my dreams, I've sailed across the sea and come across stunning lands numerous times. Even my mother has appeared in some of these dreams, and sometimes it feels like she's encouraging me to take on the risks of exploring the treacherous Dead Sea. My father, Kadu, was an elder of the forest and wanted me to follow in his footsteps and become one of the holy men who spend their days in the temple, discussing old magic and religion. But I have no interest in their mundane rituals and regulations. Instead, I dream of becoming a Rosanner, a holy warrior with the power to do things that no one else could imagine. I read in my father's old books that a Rosanner warrior can be protected against the sea. I thought if I could become one, I could cross the sea and find my mother. For that, I trained myself for years to be a powerful fighter, something my father hated mostly. One of those bitter days, where I missed my mother dearly when I was about 19 years old, I spent the entire day on that stone. Sometimes, it was the only place where I could feel peace. As the sun began to set, I knew I had to leave. I had a long journey ahead of me, climbing the spear-like rocks that marked the edge of the forest. With my wooden staff in hand, which looked like a shovel handle, very straight and up to my shoulders, I made my way up the treacherous cliffs. I had to take great care to avoid any missteps. The spear-like cliffs could tear or break my bones. However, I spent all of my childhood discovering where to put my footing. I only had a staff as a weapon and had to train myself without a teacher to guide me. I managed to learn a few fighting techniques from old books that my father forbade me to read. But that was about it. As I reached the top, I looked back for one last glimpse of the Dead Sea, and I saw something that made my heart skip a beat or two. A boat gliding silently across the water. It was there for only a moment before disappearing into the fog. It must be the J-roots, I thought to myself. Nah, I ate those this morning. Their effect must have gone by now. I am sure I saw the boat. I ran back to the last rock, hoping to catch another glimpse of the boat, but it was gone. I do not know how long I waited there before I heard a familiar voice calling out my name. My sister Mozan came to look for me. With a heavy heart, I turned away from the Dead Sea and made my way to her. Mozan stood at the entrance of the forest, holding a fire lamp searching for me. My father always said that she resembled our mother with her tall figure, brown eyes, and silky black hair falling down her shoulders. Many said that we were like twins, but I think she was much better looking than I was. As soon as she spotted me climbing the cliff, she yelled, "Are you out of your mind? Didn't your father forbid you from coming here?" "No, he didn't," I replied. "He only told me not to step on those sands, and I didn't." I clapped my hands to clean the dust, or maybe just to act normal. Then I asked without looking into her eyes, "Why are you here? Is something wrong? I have been looking for you since morning. Don't you get it?" Mozan tried to lower her voice, but I could sense her anger rising. "Get what? It's my concern where I go and what I do," I said, and tried to lead the way to the forest. "What if he finds out that you've been coming here often? What if one of the elders sees you? Do you understand the danger you are putting us in? You're tarnishing his reputation." Mozan's voice trembled. For a moment, I wanted to tell her I did not care about becoming an elder. I wanted to tell her I aspired to be a Rosanner. I wanted to share that I saw a boat on the damn sea, but I knew she would go crazy. She already thought that I had lost my mind. I never told her that I was eating jay roots. Healers use those plants to make medicine, but I ate them because they made me feel different, feel good and happy. Sometimes I could see my mother after eating them, and other times I could feel how amazing it was to be a Rosanner. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's go back before he comes here too," I said, trying to calm her down. She stared at me for a few seconds, and I could sense that she had a lot more to say. Then she passed me and led the way through the forest. The artisan forest has survived for thousands of years. According to our history book, it once spanned the entire island, but over the centuries, people have destroyed most of it. Now it only covers 1/5 of the lost island where I live. The forest was always dark and gloomy, losing its kindness at night. The air was always filled with mysterious whispers. Elders believed the spirit of the forest was awake and hunting at night. But for me, it was just another chilly night in the forest. Giant, tall trees were lined up in every direction, fading into the darkness. They were so wide that it took 50 men to encircle an average-sized tree. Their wild, bushy leaves created a ceiling in the sky, allowing only a few moonbeams to touch the ground. We walked in silence, mindful of the big roots of the trees that expanded like a spider web on the ground, until we saw the treehouse's lights. After an hour of walking in silence, I could see our stunning treehouses. They were intricately built, with some spanning multiple stories, and yet the trees themselves remained alive. Circular windows added to the forest's beauty, and the warm glow of fire lamps at night created a magical ambiance. To move between homes, suspended bridges connected the trees, while ladders and wooden staircases offered alternate paths. As a child, I loved to climb these ladders and explore the different levels of the homes. It felt like a giant playground in the sky. Our family's home was a 3-story tree on the corner of the village where all the elders lived. It was an old, treasured family inheritance, passed down through generations. My father and I had spent countless hours repairing and maintaining it over the years. Approaching the towering tree, I couldn't help but feel small. This was our home, a massive treehouse that spanned 3 floors, each intricately carved to accommodate our family of 4. At least, once it was. Before we got inside, Mozan turned to me and whispered, "Don't make him angrier. He's already in a foul mood." She ascended the spiral staircase leading to our bedrooms on the 3rd floor, while I discreetly stashed my stuff under the staircase and went to the 1st floor, where the kitchen and dining area were located. The kitchen was expertly carved out of the southern end of the treehouse and featured a sturdy stone stove and well-crafted wooden shelves stocked with various kitchen utensils. The tantalizing aroma of delicious food always wafted through the air. A round table, surrounded by 4 charmingly mismatched chairs, graced the southern window and provided a breathtaking view of the lush forest below. But my father's mood had already soured the atmosphere. As I entered the living area, situated on the northern end of the treehouse, I saw him sitting in his favorite chair, a stern look etched upon his long face. He was waiting for me, pretending that he was studying. I knew I was in trouble. The living area was a cozy space, with soft cushions and throws strewn across the floor. The northern window provided an unobstructed view of the village below, but my father's piercing stare was all I could focus on. I knew why he was angry. I had gone to the beach despite his warnings. "I knew you were going to the beach, Bod." My father's voice made me freeze in the middle of the room. I had been about to sit down, but his sudden accusation caught me off guard. I stood straight and looked at him, trying to control my emotions and act natural. He closed the book he was holding with such force that it created a cloud of dust that filled the room. "I know you are stupid and irresponsible enough to do that with yourself and your family, exactly like she did." His voice lowered as he spoke to himself. "Your mother was like you, stubborn and selfish. She was going to that damn beach too. No matter how many times I begged her, and now, tell me, where the hell is she? Tell me, how is your bloody life without a mother? Do you even understand what you are doing, son?" His words were like sharp daggers that were tearing my heart apart. I couldn't tolerate when he talked about Mom like that. I was very little when she left us. Father said that she got a boat, left the sandy beach to the cursed sea, and never came back. He stood up slowly, minding his backache, and walked towards me. I was the tallest in my whole family, including cousins and friends, but he was taller than I was. I tried to say something to make him calm down, but he didn't let me and continued his lecture. "Tomorrow we will go to the temple, and we will start your ceremony to become an elder. But you have to promise me that you will never go near that damn beach again. You should prepare yourself for the trial." He placed the book in my hands and pointed at it. "Go and review this book and make me proud tomorrow." There were many things that I wanted to say, but nothing came out of my mouth. I took the book without looking at his angry face and headed upstairs to my room, salvaging whatever I could from the kitchen. Chapter 2. The next morning I struggled to wake up at my usual early hour. The anticipation and anxiety about what the elders would ask me during the ceremony had kept me up all night, and I was feeling incredibly nervous. I tried to distract myself by reading the history book that my father gave me, but I couldn't concentrate. My mind kept wandering back to the image of the boat I had seen the day before. I was consumed with the desire to return to the beach and investigate further. However, I knew that it would only lead to trouble if I told my father or Mozan. I lay in bed, staring at the sky through the small, rounded window next to me, contemplating my thoughts. As I lay there, I began to wonder, am I losing my mind, or it is the J roots I had yesterday? I whispered to myself in self-doubt, until the sound of Mozan's loud knocking on my door startled me. "Bod, breakfast is ready. Hurry up if you don't want to be late," she shouted, and the sound of her footsteps diminished. Since my mother left, Mozan had become the most important person in my life. But I found it difficult to confide in her because she was too caring and always offered me unsolicited advice. I slapped myself twice to shake off my thoughts and put on the long, silky black robe my father had given me for the ceremony. It was a beautiful garment, and I felt comfortable in it, but wearing it made me even more nervous. I wrapped a tiny white robe around my waist to complete the formal attire. I tried to avoid consuming J roots in the morning since they took a few hours to take effect. However, given the challenging day ahead, I couldn't resist and put some in my mouth, hoping they would help calm my nerves. I descended the stairs to the kitchen, passing by my father's locked library on the second floor. His room was full of old books and parchments, as well as my mother's belongings. He had forbidden us from entering, and the only key was always in his possession. But I had managed to sneak in a few times before. As I entered the kitchen, the aroma of fresh bread and cheese wafted from the kitchen, making my stomach growl loudly. Mozan's pastries and bread were famous throughout the forest, attracting visitors from far and wide to purchase them. "Good morning, Father," I greeted as I walked to Mozan, who was preparing a plate for me. I kissed her on the cheek and sat next to my father, who appeared happier than the previous night. He glanced at me once and then nodded, trying to swallow his food before speaking. "Today is the most important day of your life, son. You are about to become an elder. Many would die to receive that title, Bod. You should be grateful. Remember to stay calm and answer their questions. They might try to provoke you or ask tough questions, but you must keep your cool and concentrate on their queries. Do you understand me?" "Yes, Father, I will remember that," I said and began to eat. As I chewed, the flavors of the fresh bread and tangy cheese danced on my tongue, enveloping my senses in a warm, comforting embrace. The warmth of the bread and the creaminess of the cheese transported me to a place of pure contentment. The worries and fears that had plagued me just moments before seemed to melt away, replaced by a sense of peace and tranquility. It was amazing that the simple act of eating breakfast had become a moment of respite, a brief escape from the pressures of the day ahead. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath and relishing the moment, knowing that soon the challenges of the day would once again demand my attention. Mozan kissed my forehead before we left and whispered in my ear, "Make me proud, little brother." It had always bothered me. She was only 2 years older than me, but she acted as though she were my mother. But I don't blame her after what she had to go through with an unfortunate marriage. Her husband was a hunter, and they always had arguments. About a year ago, he went so deep into the forbidden part of the forest and never came back. As my father and I set out towards the dense forest, 2 elders joined us and wished me luck, carrying a jar of tree milk, which is something like honey that we could extract from the trees. Some elders only drink a cup of that for the entire day, which seems to be more than enough considering how healthy they look. Their gentle pats on my shoulder and encouraging words warmed my soul. But as we passed through several villages, more and more elders joined our group, offering me an endless stream of advice and words of wisdom. Though well-intentioned, their constant chatter was weighing on my nerves, and I grew irritable and restless. Our destination lay far west of the forest, in a forbidden part that the elders deemed too dangerous for humans. They never said why. We were not alone on our journey. Over 20 forest guardians, armed with spears and dressed in sturdy leather armor, joined us for protection against the unknown perils that lay ahead. They spoke of ferocious beasts that preyed on unwary travelers, though no one had ever seen them. I always wondered if maybe it was them who took my brother-in-law. As we walked, the forest grew increasingly mysterious, and a strange scent of ancient wood and incense filled the air. The sound of leaves rustling in the wind in the far sky seemed to whisper secrets and hidden messages, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder and awe. Despite many years of living in the forest, I didn't know that part of the forest. Finally, after hours, we arrived at the temple, the largest tree I had ever seen in my life. It towered above us, so wide that I mistook it for a wall at first glance. The forest guards patrolled around the area, their watchful eyes scanning for any sign of danger. I craned my neck to catch a glimpse of the tree's canopy, but it was impossible to see where it ended, shrouded in the shadows of the forest canopy. But I could see many stories with rounded windows going up. Accompanied by a group of guards, we approached the entrance of the temple. The guards were dressed in long black robes, and each had 2 short swords fastened around their waist. The temple entrance was marked by an enormous door, and as we approached, I noticed strange writings and drawings etched into the trees. These symbols and wise words were passed down by our ancestors. I had seen them before in my father's book. We entered the temple and found ourselves in a big, rounded hall with a high ceiling. 2 wide staircases led up and down around the walls of the hall, and it amazed me at the sheer size of the tree. To my relief, a few young girls and boys greeted us all around my age. The smell of burning weeds reminded me of my father's room. We followed 2 young girls who led us downstairs in a formal manner, and as we walked, the elders started to mutter something I couldn't understand, but I could guess it was part of the ritual. Finally, we arrived at another big, rounded hall, but this one was darker than the one above. It was only lit by fire lamps, and there were many statues of different animals and the same symbols and pictures I had seen outside. My father approached me and said, "This is it, son. Take a deep breath and be calm. Go and stand in the middle of the room in that circle on the ground. Wait there until everyone is ready. Don't speak unless they ask you. Do you understand me?" Before I could respond, my father pushed me towards the middle of the room, and all eyes turned towards me. There were more elders in the room than I could count, of all different ages, sitting around the room far from the middle. There was no table or anything else in the room except for uncomfortable wooden chairs. I stood in the middle of the room, trying to avoid the judgmental gazes of the elders. I could feel their eyes on me, and I tried to focus on important subjects, but my mind kept drifting. I was nervous, and my mind raced with all the things I didn't know. It was a daunting feeling to stand there, surrounded by those with so much knowledge and experience, and I couldn't help but wonder if I was truly ready for the task that lay ahead. The J-root effect was taking its toll on me. My head was spinning, and I was struggling to keep myself composed. Without realizing the consequences, I took a big bite of the roots. "You're a fool, Bod," I chided myself. As I stood there, trying to keep my balance, 5 elders descended the stairs in white robes. They were all older than anyone in the room, and with each step they took, I feared they might fall. My mind started to create amusing stories about their wobbling movements, but I hushed myself and regained control. It took a while for the elders to settle themselves in front of me and focus their attention on me. One of the old women had a piercing gaze that made me uneasy, while one of the old men raised his hand, and the room fell into an agonizing silence. "Let us begin," he said. The first lady woman in the middle of them fixed her eyes on me and asked, "You must be proud to be Kadu's son. He is a wise man, and I am sure he will make a great elder out of you, boy. Now tell me, why do you wish to become an elder?" I felt a sudden wave of confusion wash over me. Was it the J-root, or was I losing my memories? I forced myself to speak up. "There is no greater honor than being an elder of the forest. I am proud and fortunate to have the chance to try, my lady." I heard whispers and nods from the others, but the elders in white robes remained expressionless. I noticed the other lady still gazing at me intensely, as if she could read my every thought. "I see you have a muscular body, boy. What is it you do every day?" asked one of the white-robed men with a hint of sarcasm in his voice. "I build houses and make furniture. Everything that people need is made of wood, my lord," I replied, sensing his dissatisfaction with my answer. But I didn't care. The J-root was giving me a huge confidence boost. "In your opinion, why do you think God left us here on this island surrounded by deadly waters?" asked the other woman with an annoying gaze, knowing it was a tricky question. "I believe God left us here with his miracles and gifts, so we can learn more about him and his powers. We can find the essence of him in the magical creatures, the holy river, and many other gifts that he left us. He left us here to teach us to be humble and appreciate his creations." I said those words without thinking, confident in my answer thanks to J-root. There was a whisper all around the room, and one of the elders had to raise his hand to restore order. The first lady who had questioned me first leaned forward with a lifted eyebrow and asked, "And do you think we should use those gifts for our benefit? Do you believe that is why he left us all those miracles?" I knew that I had to be careful with my next answer. I looked at my father for a second and saw how nervous and worried he was. I could read his eyes. He was begging me to give them the right answer, but the voice in my head was stronger than before. I cleared my throat and started to walk around the room, gesturing as if I were lecturing them, something that would be considered rude and inappropriate, but I didn't care. Yes, Holy One, I believe God left us those gifts to use them and understand Him deeper. For instance, we can use the Resonic stones to overcome difficult situations or protect ourselves against any danger. We can use them to cross the Dead Sea. The holy power of the stones can keep us safe against the deadly waters. As soon as those words came out of my mouth, I knew I had made a mistake. Now the room was in chaos. Elders were talking and objecting against me. Some asked for my punishment, and some were about to leave the room. The middle lady raised her hand, and the hall was restored to order. She wore a meaningful smile and asked, "Why do you think the Resonic stones can keep you safe in the sea, boy?" I struggled to contain my excitement, but the more I tried, the more it surged through me like a tidal wave. My mood was shifting, and I felt a surge of energy I had never felt before. The statues in the room began to move, their stone limbs creaking as they shifted to face me. I could hear their voices, urging me on, tempting me with promises of power and strength. My father tried to interject, but she silenced him with a single shake of her index finger. I had a revelation, a realization that could change everything. I spoke confidently, my words spilling out like water from a broken dam. "My mother crossed the sea many years ago," I said, my voice growing stronger with each passing word. "And just a day ago, I saw a boat near the shore. That means we can cross the sea. We just need to find the right way." My heart pounded in my chest as I waited for the response, but as the seconds ticked by, I realized my mistake. I had revealed too much, said too much, and now I was in danger. My father's expression turned to one of disappointment, and I could feel the weight of the room's anger pressing down on me. The elders shouted, their voices drowning out one another in a cacophony of sound. I looked at my father, hoping for a glimmer of understanding or support, but all I saw was shame. And then the leader of the elders spoke, her words dripping with disdain and hatred. "This is an example of the effect of the sandy shore and what it can do to those who are wandering there. Kudu is a great elder, but he is unable to control his own family. His wife and son are the victims of the cursed waters. This is the reason we have forbidden anyone to go near those shores." I braced myself for what was coming next, the punishment that would follow my outburst. The leader turned to me, her eyes blazing with anger and malice. "You will spend the rest of your life underground," she declared, her voice echoing through the room, "to learn what is real and what is not, boy. Your father will no longer be worthy of wearing an elder's title. Perhaps this will make a good example for the other people." She clapped twice, and everyone in the room stood up. 2 guards came and grabbed me with each arm, holding me still. Everyone started to leave the room in the same manner that they came inside. I could see the hatred in their eyes as they were leaving the room. Struggling to get out of the guard's hold, I shocked myself with my strength as one of the guards fell to the ground. "Father!" I shouted, hoping for support, but he turned to me with red eyes and shook his head. "You are no son of mine." And he left the room like the others. His words were like an icy shower over my soul. He'd left me there as if I was no one to him. More guards came and grabbed me. The white elders started to leave the room after everyone else, but before they left, the woman demanded, "Take him to the dungeons for now. Keep him away from the others." Chapter 3. As I descended into the dungeons beneath the grand hall where I had stood trial, a chill ran down my spine. The air grew heavy and damp, and the torches that flickered along the walls barely penetrated the darkness ahead. It was a long and winding tunnel that seemed to stretch on endlessly, leading me deeper into the abyss. Eventually, we arrived at a narrow cell guarded by thick iron bars. The guards stripped me of all my possessions, including the J-roots I had gathered, and gave me a long, rusty brown robe that was filthy and smelly. The effects of the J-roots were wearing off, and I could feel my mind growing clearer with each passing moment. I sat in the darkness for hours, reflecting on what had brought me to this point. But even as my sobriety returned, I couldn't shake the feeling of satisfaction that came from speaking my truth. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the tunnel, growing louder with each passing moment. The darkness ahead began to brighten as the flames from a nearby lamp flickered to life, casting strange, dancing shadows across the walls. I watched as a small figure appeared from the shadows, at first mistaking it for a child. But as the figure drew closer, I could see that it was an old woman, dressed in the same robe as me and carrying a tray. Her back was arched so severely that she seemed to be constantly reaching for the ground. Her long, white hair was tangled and dirty, falling over her face in wild strands. She slid the tray through the bars and spoke in a hoarse whisper. "Ah, you are a young one. Pity you look handsome, my dear boy. It has been a long time since we saw young prisoners here. You better eat up, my dear. There would be no food or water till tomorrow. Yes. There is only one meal per day. That's how their God wants us to be punished." I wasn't sure if she was addressing me or simply speaking to herself. But before she could leave, I pushed my face between the bars and spoke urgently. "Wait, can you find some J-roots?" She turned back to me, and as she approached, I could smell the hornbill scent that clung to her. Her voice was a low growl as she spoke. "What, boy?" "J-roots, the ones that healers use for medicine. Please, I need them." She snorted and shook her head, looking at me with something akin to pity. "I see. Is that what you are doing to your soul, boy?" As I said, there would be only one meal a day, nothing else, and there would be no bath or lavatory. Many have killed themselves here. This is your end here, my boy. Accept it. It will get easier." I refused to accept my fate, insisting that my sister would come for me. But she only chuckled in response, asking for my name instead. "Bod, son of Kudu," I said, feeling a glimmer of hope. I heard that name before. My memory is fading every day, but I am sure I heard your name before," she said, before disappearing back into the shadows. As I looked at the tray of food, my stomach turned at the sight of the tough, stale bread and the foul-smelling soup. I drank the water, but immediately regretted it as the salty taste made me gag. I paced back and forth in my cell, feeling the anger build within me until I finally slammed my fist against the iron bars, yelling out into the darkness, "Hello!" But no one came, not even the old woman. The night was never-ending, and sleep was an elusive dream. The darkness of the dungeon made it impossible to discern whether it was day or night. I paced back and forth in my cell, unable to find any peace of mind. The voices and melody were constantly repeating in my head. As I drifted in and out of consciousness, I eventually collapsed onto the filthy bed nestled in the corner of the cell. Hours later, I awoke with a start, feeling an intense burning and itching sensation all over my body. My fingers instinctively reached to scratch at the numerous red spots that covered my skin. I shed my robe, revealing the gruesome aftermath of countless insect bites. It was a living nightmare, and I felt like I was slowly losing my mind. My thoughts were fixated on the old woman who had delivered my food. She was my only hope of survival in this wretched place. As I shuffled towards the iron bars, I stumbled on something that lay on the ground. It was the tray of food that the old woman had left for me, which meant that she had already been here and gone. I had missed my chance to see her again. I had now gone 2 days without any J-roots, and the voices in my head had begun to chatter incoherently driving me to the brink of insanity. Despair consumed me as my head throbbed and my body ached with an unrelenting itch. In my desperation, I searched the floor for something to eat. Instead, I found a book that the old woman had left for me. The mere sight of it sparked a flicker of hope within me, and I felt a glimmer of joy amidst my despair. I grabbed the hard bread, washed it down with the tepid water, and made my way to the corner of the cell, where the light of the flickering torch illuminated the pages of the book. For the first time since my arrival, I felt a semblance of peace as I lost myself in the words on the page. As I sat there in the darkness, the book in my hands became a source of both curiosity and fear. I tried to distract myself by reading its pages, but the unfamiliar languages and strange symbols only added to my confusion and unease. It wasn't until I began reading about the ancient ways of combining living creatures with the gifts of the gods that my interest was piqued. The author, an ancient healer and potion maker, had documented all of his experiments and discoveries, and it seemed that his latest endeavor had been to fuse human babies in the womb with the power of the gods. As I read on, fear and anger began to rise within me. I couldn't believe that someone would try such a thing, and I felt a sickening sensation in my stomach as I imagined the possibilities of what such a being might be capable of. But my relief was palpable when I read that the experiment had failed, and the healer had documented why and how to fix the problem. Suddenly, I heard a crescendo of footsteps echoing through the dungeon. It was the old woman who had brought me food before. I didn't realize that a day had already passed. I was ecstatic to see her. She was the only human contact I had, and I was desperate for any news or information. Hey, thank you for the book," she quickly cut me off. "Shush, boy," she hissed, looking back over her shoulder towards the tunnel. Then, with a cautious voice, she approached and pushed the tray of food and water into my cell. "Give it to me, boy. If they catch me here with this book, they will kill all of my family out there." She took the book from my hands and quickly hid it inside her robe. I was taken aback by her fear and desperation. "Can you help me? Can you send a word to my sister?" I asked, trying to appeal to her sense of empathy. "I might be able to do that, but why should I? Why should I risk everything for you, boy? Do you have coins or anything valuable?" she demanded, her eyes narrowing. I felt a twinge of panic. I had nothing to offer her. But then an idea struck me. "No, but my sister can give you coins. If I get out of here, I can help your family too, whatever they want. I can build a house for them or any furniture that they need." I hoped she would find it a good deal, but she just laughed in my face. "You are a fool, boy," "Ha ha ha ha," she cackled, her eyes dancing with mirth. "Nothing can leave this place, not even a word. As I told you, accept it or it will drive you mad." With that, she snatched up the empty tray and began to walk away. I was crushed, but before she disappeared into the darkness, I shouted after her. "What about the book? Why did you give it to me?" She paused for a moment, then walked back towards me with an energy that belied her age. She brought her face close to mine, and I had to step back to avoid her overpowering scent. "I told you to shut up, boy. It was a mistake to give you that book. I'm sorry. Please tell me," I begged. She looked around, then took a deep breath before revealing what she knew. Many years ago, they brought another young woman to this very cell. Her name was Lila. She was beautiful, with long dark hair and piercing black eyes that seemed to see straight through you. She had been accused of wandering around the sandy beach like you, but after only a few days, they had taken her away. Upstairs, where the witches and warlocks lived. I had never seen her again. As the old woman's voice faded into the background, the name Lila echoed in my ears. My heart raced, threatening to burst out of my chest. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe. All I could manage to say was, "Mother!" And then everything went dark. And as I opened my eyes, I found myself back in my cell, with the old woman standing behind the bars. She had a look of concern on her face as she helped me sit up. "You fainted, boy. You need to be careful," she said. But all I could think about was what she had just told me. My mother had been here, in this very same cell, and then taken upstairs to the witches and warlocks. And my father lied to me all those years. Did my mother? Did she survive? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The old woman hesitated for a moment before responding. "I don't know, boy. Once they take someone upstairs, they never come back down here again." Tears welled up in my eyes as I thought about my mother and what might have happened to her. But then the old woman placed a hand on my shoulder, and her voice softened. She told me believers never die, boy. If you truly believe, then you might find a way out of here. I will try to find more information about her, but don't let your expectations go high. That was a long time ago. She patted my shoulder and vanished into the darkness. I never thought one day I would be in such a situation. I was desperately sad, tired, and couldn't concentrate on one subject because of J-roots. It was then that I realized what those damn roots were doing to me. For a moment, the voices in my head were telling me to end my life there. They even projected the possible ways that I could do that. I sat next to the bars in one corner and laid my head against the bars and fell asleep. Chapter 4. I awoke to a deafeningly loud bang, my head hitting the iron bar as I leapt to my feet. The ground shook beneath me, and I could hear frantic movements and screaming coming from above. For a moment, I wondered if I was still dreaming, but the chaos around me felt all too real. I remained silent, listening intently for any clues as to what was happening. Another bang and more screams rang out, but when I looked in all directions, it seemed like I was alone in the tunnel. "Hello? Can you hear me?" I shouted, but there was no response. I grew increasingly impatient, shouting louder and louder until my voice became hoarse, but all I could hear was the chaotic sounds of the upper level. Just when I thought all hope was lost, a familiar voice echoed through the chaos. "Hide, boy, hide!" the old woman yelled, her voice strained as she attempted to run towards my cell. Despite her best efforts, she was painfully slow. "What's going on?" I asked, but she was too out of breath to answer. With one hand on her knee and the other in the air, she attempted to signal something to me, but before she could speak, a silvery blade protruded from her chest and blood splattered all over me. The blade lifted her off the ground, slicing through her shoulder before she fell to the ground. I was paralyzed with shock as a dark figure emerged from the shadows. The long, bloody blade caught my eye first, but as my gaze traveled up to the creature's face, I saw a set of red eyes with sharp fangs and a sinister smile. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen before, not in any books or drawings. The creature was humanoid but much larger, with bulging muscles and a bald head. It hissed at me before attacking the iron bars with its blade. I retreated back into my cell, hugging the wall at the back. The creature was taller than me and much stronger, and it continued to hit the wall with incredible force. When it locked its gaze with mine, I felt like a helpless rabbit in front of a wolf. "What are you?" I shouted, but the creature remained silent, pacing back and forth as if it were looking for a way inside my cell. I had to act fast. With all my strength, I broke the bed and took a long piece of timber, using it as a makeshift weapon. The creature dropped its blade and grabbed onto the bars with both hands, pulling them apart. I saw the bars begin to bend, so I ran towards the creature with the sharp end of the timber. Before it could force its way inside, I plunged the timber beneath its neck where there was no armor, and black blood poured out. I stood there, in shock, watching the creature die before kicking its lifeless body away and running outside of my cell. I tightened my grip on the creature's long, heavy sword as I made my way towards the end of the tunnel, away from the stairs leading upstairs. The walls were lined with countless empty cells, their doors locked and bolted shut. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I continued on, my heart pounding in my chest. At last, I reached the end of the tunnel, a dead end. I tried the last cell, and to my surprise, the door was open. Without hesitation, I jumped inside and hid under a dirty blanket in the darkest corner, unsure of how long I would have to wait. Time passed slowly as chaos and commotion echoed through the dungeon. I held my breath, listening for any signs of danger. Eventually, the chaos died down, and there were no more signs of the creatures. I slowly emerged from the cell, cautiously looking around. There was no sound or movement in the tunnel. I started to tiptoe back toward my cell, holding the long sword with two hands. But when I reached my cell, there was nobody there. Neither the big creature nor the old woman. However, I could see the track of blood on the floor, showing that someone had been down here and dragged them out. Being more cautious, I made my way towards the staircase, which wasn't very far from my cell. There was another big iron bar and a gate at the entrance of the round staircase, but it was also broken, and I could easily walk up to the trial hall. No one was in that rounded hall except a bunch of broken chairs, and I could see the blood was everywhere, as if a big battle had happened there. I stood there and listened carefully for a few minutes, then made my way up again to the entrance hall. But before I came up, I looked to see if anyone was there. The result was the same as the previous hall downstairs. Blood was everywhere, and there was no sign of any living thing. I looked and noticed that the entrance gate to the temple was wide open, making me excited that I could run out of that doomed place. However, a thought stopped me. I remembered my mother and what the old woman said about where they had taken her. I walked slowly towards another staircase that was going up the massive tree, but before I stepped on the staircase, I saw shadows moving on the wall. Then I looked up and saw two of those big creatures coming down. They were at the top of the stairs, which was a long run. I had to decide what to do. But there was no chance for me to fight with both of them, so I decided to run out and come back whenever those creatures left. Without making any sound, I ran outside and felt the fresh air and the moonlight. It was dark outside, and there was no fire lamp or torch anywhere, so I had to concentrate more. With each step of freedom, a sense of joy and excitement was rising in me. I couldn't wait to see Mozan. I already missed her so much, and at that point, she was the only one that I could turn to. I wanted to tell her about our mother, and I couldn't wait to deal with my father, if I could still call him a father. As I made my way towards our village, a sharp pain shot through my shoulder, and I saw a shining sword coming out of my back. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer, a sudden jolt of pain that left me gasping for breath. I knew without looking that one of the creatures was behind me, its hot breath sending shivers down my spine. But the pain was so overwhelming that I couldn't even scream, couldn't move. I knew I had to act fast before it was too late. With a fierce determination, I pushed my sword backward, aiming for the creature's body with my other hand. Every ounce of strength I had left was poured into that thrust as I pushed myself forward to escape the blade in my shoulder. The creature let out a guttural roar and stumbled backwards, but I knew I couldn't rest yet. Turning around, I attacked it again with all my might, my sword piercing its thick leather armor. The creature was pinned to a tree, but I knew more of them were coming. I had to get out of there fast. I ran deep into the dark forest, not knowing how long I could keep going. But I had to keep moving to find somewhere safe, somewhere that no one else would dare to go. I didn't want to go toward our village to put everyone in danger, so I decided to go to the sandy shore. Finally, I reached the top of the cliffs at the sandy shore, the first rays of dawn creeping over the horizon. Without hesitation, I leapt off the edge, my injured body weak and battered. My heart raced as I tumbled through the air, my mind consumed with fear and uncertainty. I hit the last rock with a sickening thud, then collapsed onto the sand. Pain racked my body. My right leg was broken, but I had to keep going. Dragging myself forward inch by inch on the sands, I finally reached the water's edge. I looked back over my shoulder, searching for any signs of pursuit. But luck was on my side this time, and there was no sign of the creatures. As I lay there, gasping for breath, I heard a faint sound coming from the sea. I rolled on the sands toward the sea, and my eyes widened in disbelief. There was the boat, moving gently towards the shore. The boat in front of me was big enough to fit 20 men, yet there was only one person on board. I couldn't help but wonder who could cross the sea all alone. The boat glided smoothly on the dark sand until it came to a stop, half inside the water and half on the sands. My eyes were fixated on the boat as I tried to make out any details I could from the distance. As I looked on, an old man emerged from the cabin. His skin was weathered by the sun, and he was bald with a long white beard. He wore a long black robe and held a smooth wooden staff, metal-coated on each end. I was mesmerized by his presence, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and wonder. The old man noticed me and spoke in an unknown language. I couldn't understand a word he said, but I could sense the wisdom and depth in his voice. Suddenly, a majestic stag stepped out of the boat. The creature was much bigger than a horse, with two silvery, sharp antlers that twisted in harmony. She had a smooth carpet of light brown hair covering her body, except for white fur in a triangular shape under her neck. Her stunning hazel eyes gazed upon me, and I felt warmth and relaxation wash over me, even though I was shivering in the cold. "An Olakan!" I shouted, with all the power that was left in me. I fell to the sand, my eyes closed in awe and reverence.